It was a quiet, rainy night at the White House. The usual buzz of activity had faded, replaced by the soft sound of raindrops brushing against century-old windows. Secret Service agents moved silently through the halls like they were part of the walls. In his private quarters, President Donald Trump had finally loosened his tie and let out a deep breath. Melania was in New York attending a charity gala. For once, the president was alone, with no cameras, no meetings, just a rare moment of stillness. His phone buzzed in his pocket. He glanced at it, then ignored it. Not tonight. As he walked past the hallway portrait of Abraham Lincoln, those wise eyes always seeming to see straight through him, he heard something unexpected. A faint, muffled sound. He stopped. It came again, a choked sob, quiet and controlled, but undeniably real. It was coming from Barron's room. Trump looked at his watch. Almost 9:40 p.m. It wasn't late enough for his son to be asleep, but it was too late for this kind of crying. He stepped closer to the door. A soft golden light seeped into the hallway through the crack. He paused. This wasn't a press conference or a political maneuver. This was something more delicate. "Barron," he called, voice low. A moment passed. Then a quiet, "Yeah," came from inside. The tone was flat, strained. Trump pushed the door open gently. Inside, Barron sat on the edge of his bed, his shoulders curled forward, wiping his eyes before his father could see. The room was immaculate, books perfectly stacked, everything in its place. A sense of control in contrast to the storm inside him. "You okay?" Trump asked, stepping in and closing the door behind him. "I'm fine," Barron said quickly, eyes still averted. But Trump could see that wasn't true. All the skills that served him in boardrooms and negotiations felt useless now. He crossed to the other bed and sat, leaving a respectful distance. "You don't look fine," he said softly. Barron let out a bitter chuckle. "It's just dumb stuff. Doesn't matter." "Try me," Trump said. Barron finally looked up. His eyes were tired, not from lack of sleep, but from carrying something heavy. "It's everything," Barron began, hesitating. "The way people stare. The things they write about me. The fact that some kids at school avoid me while others act like I'm some kind of ticket to attention because of who you are." He paused, swallowing hard. "Sometimes I wonder if anyone will ever see me, not the president's son, not the kid in the background. Just me." Trump blinked. He hadn't expected that. Not from Barron. And certainly not tonight. "I didn't realize," he said quietly. "I didn't know it was like that for you." "You wouldn't," Barron replied, his voice calm, without anger. "You're always in the spotlight. People orbit around you. I just trail behind." The words struck deep. Trump thought of his own father, distant, driven, rarely impressed. He had spent his life building, achieving, proving something. Had he made his son feel the same way he once felt? "I thought I was protecting you," he admitted. "Trying to teach you how to be strong. Like me. But maybe that's not what you needed." Barron shook his head slightly. "I didn't need bulletproof. I just needed to be seen. To feel like I wasn't invisible behind your shadow." Trump nodded slowly, moved closer, the mattress dipping under his weight. He placed a hand on Barron's shoulder, not for the cameras, not for show, just a father reaching out. "I hear you," he said. "And I want to do better. Just tell me how." Barron didn't answer right away, but his shoulders eased. A bit of the tension melted away. He didn't pull back. They sat together in that moment, not president and son, but simply two people finally beginning to understand each other. The silence between them wasn't uncomfortable. It felt necessary, like something long unspoken had finally been allowed to breathe. Outside, the rain had softened, drizzling gently over the Capitol. Inside, the distance between father and son was beginning to close. And in that quiet, something began to heal. The White House was waking up. Staff moved quickly through the halls, phones ringing, the usual rhythm of government beginning for the day. But in the private residence, things felt different. Donald Trump hadn't slept well. All night, he kept seeing his son Barron's tearful face from the evening before, not out of shame, but because it revealed something he had long ignored: how much his ambition had cost them both. He skipped the usual sharp suit and red tie that morning, choosing more casual clothes, and headed to the family dining room. Barron was already there, hunched over a bowl of oatmeal, scrolling through his phone. "Morning," Trump said, sliding into the seat across from him. "Morning," Barron replied, eyes still fixed on his screen. Trump poured himself a coffee, letting the silence hang between them, not awkward, just quiet. "What you said last night," Trump began slowly, "about living in my shadow." Barron stiffened a little. "It's fine. I shouldn't have said anything." "No," Trump said softly. "It's not fine. That's the point." He paused, looking at his son. "I've spent most of my life making sure people see me, hear me, remember me. I never stopped to think what all that attention might do to the people standing beside me." Barron looked up, a little surprised by how honest his father sounded. "You said you don't know who you're supposed to be," Trump went on. "I want to help you with that. Not by telling you who to become, but by asking, maybe for the first time, what do you care about?" He leaned forward, resting his elbows on the table. A relaxed posture, far from his usual confident pose in front of cameras. "What makes you feel alive, Barron? Not what fits the family image, not what impresses people. Just what matters to you." Barron blinked, caught off guard by the question. He slowly put his phone down. "I like writing," he said carefully. "And design. Architecture, maybe." He paused, then added, "But I don't know if any of it will ever matter. I mean, people will just see me as your kid, not someone with ideas of his own." Trump nodded, clearly understanding. "I know that feeling," he said. "When I took over from my dad, people said I was just riding on his name, that I hadn't earned anything." "So what did you do?" Barron asked. "I built things louder than anyone expected," Trump said, with a hint of that old fire in his eyes. "I made sure no one could ignore me." Then his expression changed. Softer, more thoughtful. "But it took me a long time to figure out why I was really doing it." He wrapped his hands around his coffee mug. "I was building because I didn't know how to stop. I was scared that if I slowed down, I'd disappear. That silence meant I didn't matter." Barron looked up at him fully now, surprised by the vulnerability in his father's voice. "And now?" he asked quietly. "Now I think, the truth shows up in the quiet moments," Trump said. "The ones we usually ignore because we're too busy chasing something." Later that morning, they walked together across the south lawn. The dew still clung to the grass. Secret Service agents kept their distance, quiet and respectful. There were no cameras, no reporters, just the two of them under a wide blue sky. "You know," Trump said, as they reached a bench near the rose garden, "your grandfather, my father, was nothing like me. Quiet, private, always serious." Barron looked at him with interest. "He never once told me he was proud," Trump continued. "I spent years trying to win his approval. I built buildings so big, so flashy, hoping he'd finally say, 'You did good.'" He turned to Barron, speaking plainly. "I don't want that for you. I don't want you chasing ghosts the way I did. You don't have to be like me. You just have to believe that you matter, for who you are, not because of my name." They sat there for a while, watching birds in the trees, letting the silence say what words couldn't. "Can I ask you something?" Barron said after a while. "Of course," Trump replied. "Do you regret how you raised us?" Trump didn't rush to answer. He looked out over the lawn for a long moment before saying, "Yes. I wish I had slowed down more, taken more time. I thought giving you success was the best gift I could offer, but maybe just being there would have meant more." Barron nodded quietly, soaking it in. "I want to try now," Trump said. "If you'll let me." A small smile appeared on Barron's face. Better late than never, right? That evening, Trump canceled a fundraising dinner without saying why. Instead, he had the kitchen prepare 2 steaks and brought them upstairs to Barron's room. Barron was at his desk, sketching in a notebook. No suits, no speeches, just father and son eating dinner together, laughing over stories neither had ever shared before. Trump spoke about the first business he failed at, the night he almost gave up, and the moment he realized that what lasts isn't power or money, but connection. And for the first time in a long time, Barron saw his father not as a headline, but as a man trying to make things right. Trump could still remember the day his son Barron was born. He had held him in the hospital, looked down at his tiny face, and whispered, "Please don't let me mess this up." It had been one of the rare times in his life where he felt truly unsure of himself. That memory came flooding back years later, when Barron walked into his study with a notebook in hand. "I wrote something," Barron said, hesitating in the doorway. "Would you want to hear it?" Trump put down the stack of briefing papers in front of him and gave a small nod. "Of course." Barron sat across from him, opened his leather-bound notebook, and cleared his throat. "There's a shadow behind every flame. It flickers quietly while the fire draws the eyes. It shapes the flame but stays unspoken. One can't exist without the other, but only one is remembered." He looked up after reading, unsure of how it would be received. Trump stared at him for a moment. Then he said softly, "That's incredible, son. Truly, you have a gift." Barron smiled, really smiled, for the first time in what felt like years. It wasn't forced. It was real. The following week brought its usual chaos: tense meetings, shouting reporters, and long phone calls with world leaders. Trump walked through it all with his usual confidence, but something inside him had shifted. He couldn't stop thinking about the poem, or the boy who had written it. That night, and the ones after, he began doing something new. He listened. In the quiet of the residence, after the official work was done, he and Barron started talking more. Sometimes for just 10 minutes. Sometimes for hours. It wasn't always serious. Sometimes they just sat and watched TV, or ate dinner quietly. But slowly, they built something between them that hadn't been there before: connection. One evening, Barron came into the study again, holding the same notebook. "I wrote another one," he said. "Can I read it?" Trump set his phone aside. "I'd love to hear it." This one was longer, about the feeling of growing up invisible next to someone the world always watched. It wasn't bitter. It was thoughtful, honest. "I never meant for you to feel unseen," Trump said after Barron finished. Barron shrugged. "I know, but it's not about blame. I just don't want to disappear next to your spotlight." Trump stood up and placed a hand on his son's shoulder. "You're not invisible. Not to me." He motioned for Barron to sit in the chair across from his desk. "I want to tell you something I've never said out loud." Barron sat, curious. "When I was your age, I wasn't scared of losing or failing. I was scared of being forgotten," Trump admitted. "So I built a name, a brand, an empire, because being noticed felt like the only way to matter." Barron nodded quietly. "I think I've picked up some of that fear, but I want to handle it differently." Trump smiled. "I think you already are." The next day, breaking his usual routine, Trump invited Barron to join him in the Oval Office. Not for cameras, not for a photo op, just to sit and observe. Barron stayed quiet, watching closely and taking notes in his journal. When the room cleared, Trump asked, "What did you think?" Barron took a second to respond. "It's a lot. More pressure than I expected. But it feels like a performance. Like everyone's playing a role." Trump raised an eyebrow. "Go on." "You act like nothing ever gets to you," Barron said. "But when we're alone, I see a different version of you. And I think I like that one better." Trump chuckled softly. "The one who listens?" Barron nodded. "Yeah." That night, Trump called Milane. "He's not a kid anymore," he said. "He's been carrying a lot on his own. I didn't even notice." Milane's voice was calm. "You always tried to protect him. But maybe now it's time to walk beside him, not in front." After hanging up, Trump stood at the window, staring at the glowing lights of the Washington Monument. He thought about Barron's poem, about the flame and the shadow. For years, he had tried to be the brightest light in the room. But in doing so, he hadn't noticed the quiet strength that had grown beside him. That weekend, Trump did something unexpected. He canceled a public appearance. Instead, he asked the kitchen to make steaks and brought dinner up to Barron's room. They sat on the floor, eating and laughing, sharing stories they had never told each other before. Trump even opened up about his first big business failure, about the night he nearly gave up, about the fear of not being enough. Barron, in return, shared more of his writing, thoughtful reflections about legacy, pressure, and finding identity in the quiet spaces no one else noticed. Trump didn't try to fix or change any of it. He just said, "You've got something special, son." And this time, Barron didn't just smile. He believed it. Trump cleared his calendar completely. No calls, no meetings, no appearances. Just one full day set aside for his son. No press, no staff, no schedule. Just father and son. They walked the National Mall in plain clothes, blending into the crowd. They explored museums Barron had always wanted to visit. Quiet places filled with art, history, and the kind of stories that don't make headlines. Barron spoke with quiet passion about what moved him. The small details in a painting, the meaning behind forgotten sculptures, how true value is often found not in grand displays, but in subtle moments. Trump didn't talk much. He listened. And the more he listened, the more he saw something he had missed. Barron was not just thoughtful. He was deeply perceptive, kind, and emotionally intelligent, the sort of person who noticed what others didn't. That kind of empathy, Trump realized, was rare, especially in the high-powered circles he had spent most of his life in. On the ride back to the White House, Trump turned to his son. "You know what I've realized today?" Barron looked over. "What?" "You're not the shadow after all." Barron gave him a curious glance. "You're the next flame," Trump said. "A different kind of fire. Steadier, warmer. And I think that's the kind the world needs right now." Barron didn't say anything right away, but his expression, relaxed, genuine, full of something close to relief, said more than words could. And for the first time in a long while, Trump felt that he had offered his son something lasting. Not approval, not advice, but belief. When Monday came, it brought its usual storm of urgent meetings, breaking news, and endless decisions. But before diving in, Trump stopped by Barron's room. The door was open. Barron sat at his desk in a hoodie, still half asleep, flipping through a book of essays. Trump knocked lightly. "Breakfast?" Barron looked up, surprised. "Don't you have that national security briefing?" "I pushed it back an hour." Barron smiled. "Then yay. I'd like that." They walked down to the family dining room, where a quiet breakfast waited. Scrambled eggs, toast, fruit. No aides, no press, just the two of them. After a few minutes of silence, Trump set down his fork. "I want to ask you something," he said. "Okay. You've spent your whole life watching me. What do you think I've missed?" Barron didn't rush to answer. "Are you sure you want to hear it?" "I'm sure." Barron leaned back, thinking. "You've spent so much time proving you're right," he said carefully, "that maybe you forgot what it feels like to be questioned, not by enemies, not by critics, but by someone who actually cares. Someone who's trying to understand you, not fight you." Trump looked down, thoughtful. "That's fair." Barron went on, gently. "You're one of the strongest people I know, but sometimes strength becomes a wall, and it can keep out the very people trying to get close." Trump sat with that. Then he smiled faintly. "You're my mirror now." Barron chuckled. "Maybe just the honest kind." Later that afternoon, Trump made an unusual choice. He took Barron to a small unused room in the White House that had once been a reading space. He had asked for it to be cleared the day before. The room was now empty, just clean walls, an open floor, and possibility. He handed Barron a high-quality sketching set. Barron looked down at the materials, confused. "What's this for?" "Because I think you have something to say," Trump replied. "And I don't want you waiting around for someone to give you permission to say it." "You want me to draw?" Barron asked. "I want you to create something that's yours. Not mine. Not part of anyone else's story. Yours." Barron stood still, absorbing the words. Then he stepped toward the wall, picked up the first piece of paper, and began sketching. Trump took a seat in the corner and watched. He didn't interrupt. He didn't ask questions. For over an hour, he simply observed as his son worked, focused and inspired. What emerged surprised him. It was an abstract portrait, two faces, fused but distinct. One bold and confident, turned outward. The other quieter, softer, facing inward, filled with shadow and light. When Barron finished, he looked over at his father. "It's you," he said. "But it's me too." Trump stepped forward, taking in the drawing. "I've been carrying both versions of you," Barron continued, "trying to figure out which one I'm supposed to become." Trump nodded, the meaning sinking in. I've spent my life building a reflection, he said quietly. Maybe it's time I learned how to see it. And in that quiet room, something changed, not just between them, but within them. A new beginning, drawn in silence. He said quietly, but you just showed me the part of myself I never had the courage to face. Then, gently, Trump placed a hand on Barron's shoulder, a gesture that carried more than words ever could. And you're right, he added. Both versions of me, they deserve to exist. Barron didn't reply with words. Instead, he stepped forward and embraced his father. It wasn't the stiff, camera-ready kind of embrace they'd performed for the public before. It was real, human, unguarded. That night, after Barron had gone to bed, Trump stepped onto the Truman balcony alone. The city stretched out before him, silent and still. He pulled out his phone and dialed a number, his father's old office line, disconnected years ago. He knew no one would answer, but he held the phone to his ear anyway, needing to speak the words aloud. I thought being strong meant being seen by everyone, he said into the quiet night air. But maybe true strength, maybe it's seeing someone else clearly. He paused, emotion tightening his throat. Maybe that's the legacy that matters. He ended the call and looked up at the stars. No cameras, no headlines, just a man reckoning with truths too long ignored. And downstairs, a son's drawing dried on the wall, quiet testimony to what had finally been acknowledged. The next morning, Trump knocked on Barron's door. But this time, he came not with instructions or schedules, but with a question. Remember that trip you said you wanted to take? Barron looked up from his desk. Which one? Anywhere you want. Just the two of us. No staff. No press. No distractions. Barron's expression shifted from surprise to cautious hope. You're serious? Completely. A slow smile spread across Barron's face. Then yes, let's do it. They chose the mountains of Colorado, Barron's pick. A quiet cabin near a lake. No security detail in sight. No aides rushing in with papers. They cooked together, hiked forest trails, watched sunsets spill gold and crimson across the peaks. For once, time moved gently. On their final night, wrapped in wool blankets beside a crackling fire, stars brilliant overhead, Barron broke the silence. Do you ever think about your legacy? He asked. What people will remember you for? Trump gazed into the flames. I used to, he said after a moment. I thought it'd be the skyline I changed, the deals I made, maybe even the presidency. He turned to his son. But now I think the real legacy might be this. Just showing up, being honest, being here. Barron nodded. That's what I'll remember. They sat in silence, not needing more words. The fire warmed them, but so did something deeper. A connection that had taken years to build, now finally real. A bridge had formed across all that distance. When they returned to Washington, there was no fanfare, no press release. Just a quiet understanding. Something between them had changed. Trump resumed his duties, the world as demanding as ever. But each evening, without fail, he knocked on Barron's door. Got a minute to talk? And the answer never changed. Always. A month later, Barron's abstract portrait, the one with the two faces, appeared in a small local gallery under the initials BT. One art critic wrote, "Whoever created this understands power from the inside." But rather than glorifying it, they explore its duality, the public image and the private truth. It doesn't shout. It invites you to look inward. Trump saw the review. He didn't comment. But he clipped it, had it framed in black, and hung it behind his desk in the private study, not for display, but as a quiet reminder. One evening, as summer softened into fall, father and son walked the south lawn. The light was golden, shadows stretching across the grass. The moment was quiet, the world distant. You know, Trump said, his voice low. I used to think my greatest achievement would be leaving a mark on the world. Barron glanced at him, curious. But now, Trump continued, being present with you, truly present, might be the most important thing I've ever done. Barron smiled. More important than the empire? The presidency. Trump returned the smile, unguarded. Without question. They walked on, side by side, their steps in rhythm. No cameras captured it. No speeches were given. Just a father and son, Finally understanding that the most powerful legacy isn't what you leave behind. It's what you build while you're still here, together.